Speaking moving house, we all know that being stressed is bad for us, but sidestepping daily pressures isn't always easy.
Well, a new study might be the motivation that you've been looking for. Researchers have found that stress can shrink your brain and increase the risk of dementia. So how can you keep your cool to sharpen your smarts? Here to talk us through the findings is Dr. Helena Popovic. Helena, lovely to see you. Can you start by telling us how the authors of the study define stress?
Well, stress is defined as our response to anything that we perceive as threatening to our physical, psychological or emotional well-being. So in the past, stress was facing a saber-toothed tiger. Today, stress is facing an angry boss, a demanding client, having a sick child. Anything that we feel we can't fully control triggers the stress response. And it's characterised by the brain sending a message to the adrenal glands to release adrenaline and cortisol into our bloodstream. And that fires us up to deal with the threat. It's that fright, flight, fight response.
Yeah, sure. Does all stress lead to brain shrinkage or only certain types of stress?
No, the good news is not all stress does. Acute stress, in the initial stages of stress, short bursts of stress actually fire us up because adrenaline gives us a surge of energy. We're actually sharper, we're more focused, we think better, our performance improves. And there's a name for this good stress. It's called eustress. It's spelled EU stress. So a little bit of anxiety before your job interview is a good thing because the adrenaline will help you nail it. But if you are overwhelmed by fear, or if the stress, even if it's not that severe, if it continues on day in, day out, week after week, month after month, if it becomes chronic, that's when the cortisol starts to damage our brain and our body. And then it doesn't matter what the cause is, whether it's interpersonal conflict, whether it's constant deadlines, whether it's an excessive workload, whatever it is, if it's ongoing, the longer that cortisol is produced, the more it's going to damage both our brain and our body.
So how does stress cause brain shrinkage? And we mean physically, right?
Yeah, we do mean physically. Because the characteristic hormone that is produced in chronic stress, it's cortisol. And cortisol actually attaches to cells in a part of the brain called the hippocampus. And it actually causes the cells to die. And this part of the brain is really important in learning and memory. So it's a significant impact on the brain. And the other thing that stress does is it makes the barrier between the blood and the brain more leaky. So toxins and inflammatory molecules that shouldn't enter the brain start to enter the brain and interfere with functioning. And in this study, what the researchers did was they followed more than 2,000 people. It was in America for 8 years, average age 48. Now in Australia that would be stalking, but following them for 8 years was science in America. And what they found at the beginning and end of the study, they took blood levels of cortisol, they took MRI scans of their brain to assess brain volume, and they also gave them tests of memory and thinking skills. And they found that those that had the lowest levels of cortisol the highest levels of cortisol had the smallest brains and also performed the worst on all those tests of memory and thinking. So cortisol really does hammer our brain function.
Wow, that is a fascinating study. Helena, terrific to have you with us. Thank you very much. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got to say something good. We've got to say that we can actually improve this just by taking slow, deep breaths in the stress. In the stressful moment.
That we will.
3 deep breaths.
Helena, thank you.
Before every show.
That's right. From now on.
That's right.
Thanks, Helena.
Thanks.